Hello learners, this is Habeeba with Excelwithme. If you like the video, please do like, share, subscribe and comment below. Let's start today's class, that is Central Teacher Eligibility Test Paper 2 Social Science Class 6 Hour Pass 1 NCERT Practice Questions. Let's begin with the first question of the chapter. 9th chapter, Traders, Kings and Pilgrims. What was South India famous for? That was gold, spices, especially pepper and precious stones. What was particularly valued in the Roman Empire so much so that it was known as black gold? That was pepper. Gold, spices, especially pepper and precious stones. Related to that, we are having two statements. Let's see what are they. Traders carried many of these goods to Rome in ships across the sea and by land in caravans. There must have been quite a lot of trade, as many Roman gold coins have been found in South India. Obviously, both the statements are correct related to gold, spices, especially pepper and precious stones. Where do we find evidence of trade? In the Sangam poems, which part of the subcontinent is marked by a long coastline and with hills, plateaus and river valleys. That was the southern half. Amongst the river valleys, which is the most fertile? That was the river Kaveri. Which poems mention the Movendar? That was Sangam poems. What is a Tamil word meaning three chiefs used for the heads of three ruling families, the Cholas, Cheras and Pandyas? That was Movendar. Movendar was used for these three dynasties, ruling families, the Cholas, Cheras and the Pandyas. Who became powerful in South India around 2300 years ago? The Cholas, Cheras and the Pandyas. Each of the three chiefs, Cholas, Cheras and Pandyas, had two centers of power. What are they? What were they? One inland and one on the coast. Of the 6 cities, 2 were very important. What were they? Puhar or Kaveripattinam, the port of the Cholas, and Madurai, the capital of the Pandyas. Many poets whose compositions are found in the Sangam collection composed poems in praise of chiefs who often rewarded them with precious stones, gold horses, elephants, chariots and fine cloth. Around 200 years later, which dynasty became powerful in western India? That was the Satavahanas. Who was the most important ruler of the Satavahanas? Gautami Putra Shri Satakarni. Who know about Gautami Putra Shri Satakarni from an inscription? We know about Gautami Shri Satakarni from an inscription composed on behalf of his mother. Now, who is she? Gautami Balashri. What were Gautami Putra Shri Satakarni and other Satavahana rulers known as? They were known as lords of the Dakshina Patha. Satavahanas, related to Satavahana statements, the Dakshina Patha, literally the route leading to the south. Dakshina means south, Patha means route leading to the south, which was also used as a name for the entire southern region. Gautami Putra Shri Satakarni sent his army to the eastern, western and southern coasts. Both the statements are correct. Where was the techniques of making silk first invented around 7,000 years ago? Obviously, that was in China. Everybody knows this question. People from China who went to distant lands on foot, horseback and on camels carried silk with them. The paths they followed came to be known as, very, very important question, that is the Silk Route. Chinese rulers sent gifts of silk to which rulers, and from there the knowledge of silk spread further west. That was Iran and West Asia. About 2000 years ago, wearing silk became the fashion amongst the rulers and rich people in Rome. Who were the best known rulers controlled the Silk Route? That was the Kushans, because India lies in between the Western countries and China. So from China, the goods were carried from the route in between India. So Kushans, they were the best known rulers who controlled the Silk Route. Who ruled over Central Asia and Northwest India around 2000 years ago? The Kushanas. What were the two major centers of power for the Kushanas? That was the Peshawar and Mathura. What was included in the Kushana's kingdom? That was Takshashila. During Kushana's rule, a branch of the Silk Route extended from Central Asia down to the seaports at the mouth of the river Indus, from where silk was shipped westwards to the Roman Empire. Both the statements are correct. Who were amongst the earliest rulers of the subcontinent to issue gold coins and used by traders along the Silk Route? They were the Kushanas. Who was the most famous Kushana ruler who ruled around 1900 years ago? That was Kanishka. Who organized a Buddhist council where scholars met and discussed important matters? That was Kanishka. Now let's understand the statements related to Kanishka. Ashwaghosha, a poet who composed a biography of the Buddha Charita, lived in his court. Ashwaghosha and other Buddhist scholars now began writing in Sanskrit. Yes, both the statements are correct. A new form of Buddhism known as Mahayana Buddhism developed. This had two distinct features. Let's understand the two distinct features here. Earlier, the Buddhist presence was shown in sculptures by using certain signs. For instance, his attainment of enlightenment was shown by sculptures of the peepal tree. Now statues of Buddha were made. Many of these were made in Mathura, while others were made in Takshashila. So first was, earlier what happened? Attainment of enlightenment was shown through some sculptures of the peepal tree. So you can see here the sculpture, the picture is given here how this is the tree where Buddha had attained his enlightenment. So a sculpture from the stupa at Sanchi, this also can be one question. Look at the tree and the empty seat below it. Sculptures carved this to indicate that the Buddha had attained enlightenment while meditating under the tree. The second one, the second change was a belief in bodhisattvas. These were supposed to be persons who had attained enlightenment. Once they attained enlightenment, they could live in complete isolation and meditate in peace. So these are the two important changes occurred. Now, spread of Buddhism statements, the worship of bodhisattvas became very popular and spread throughout Central Asia, China and later to Korea and Japan. Buddhism also spread to Western and Southern India, where dozens of caves were hollowed out of hills for monks to live in. Yes, both the statements are correct. Now, cave monasteries, related to that, few points we have to understand very carefully. Some of the caves were made on the orders of the kings and queens, others by merchants and farmers. These were often located near passes through the Western Ghats. Roads connecting prosperous ports on the coast with cities in the Deccan ran through these passes. Now, traders probably halted in these cave monasteries during their travels. So, all the statements we have to remember. Now, where was Buddhism spread apart from India? That was southeastwards to Sri Lanka, Myanmar, Thailand and other parts of Southeast Asia including Indonesia. Now, what was the older form of Buddhism more popular in these areas? In these areas in the sense Sri Lanka, Myanmar, Thailand and also Asia including Indonesia. That was Theravada Buddhism. Who are the men and the women undertake journeys to the holy places in order to offer worship? They were called as pilgrims. Who were the best known Chinese Buddhist pilgrims who came to visit places associated with the life of the Buddha as well as famous monasteries? These people are very, very important to remember. Fahian about 1600 years ago, Yuanzhang around 1400 years, and I King, who came about 50 years after Yuanzhang. So these people we have to remember. Who took the land route back to China through the northwest and Central Asia, carried back with him statues of the Buddha made of gold, silver and sandalwood, and over 600 manuscripts loaded on the backs of 20 horses? That was Yuanzhang. What was a unique center of Buddhist learning? That was Nalanda. Now let's understand the statements related to Yuanzhang. Over 50 manuscripts were lost when the boat on which he was crossing the Indus capsized. He spent the rest of his life translating the remaining manuscripts from Sanskrit into Chinese. Now these two statements are correct. Who spent time studying in Nalanda, that is Bihar, the most famous Buddhist monastery of the period? That was Yuanzhang. Now Vishnu as Varaha, an image from Iran, Madhya Pradesh. Here picture is given. This magnificent statue is of a special form of Vishnu, the Varaha or boar. According to the Puranas, Vishnu took the shape of a boar in order to rescue the earth which had sunk into water. Here the earth is shown as a woman. Now what was also the time when the worship of certain deities, which became a central feature of later Hinduism, gained importance? That was the beginning of Bhakti. This Bhakti movement is very, very important. These deities included Shiva, Vishnu and goddess such as Durga. Now statements: Bhakti is generally understood as a person's devotion to his or her chosen deity. Anybody, whether rich or poor, belonging to the so-called high or low caste, man or woman, could follow the path of Bhakti. Both the statements are correct. Now Bhagavad-Gita, related to that statements, the idea of Bhakti is present in the Bhagavad-Gita, a sacred book of the Hindus which is included in the Mahabharata. In this, Krishna, the god, asked Arjuna, his devotee and friend, to abandon all dharmas and take refuge in him, as only he can set Arjuna free from every evil. So both the statements are correct. Who emphasized devotion and individual worship of a god or goddess rather than the performance of elaborate sacrifices? Those who followed the system of Bhakti. According to this system, this system of belief, if a devotee worships the chosen deity with a pure heart, the deity will appear in the form in which he or she may desire. That was the Bhakti system. Now let's see the statements related to Bhakti. The deity could be thought of as a human being, lion, tree or any other form. Once this idea gained acceptance, artists made beautiful images of these deities. Yes, both the statements are correct. Where does the term Bhakti come from? The Sanskrit term Bhaj, meaning to divide or share. What is an intimate two-way relationship between the deity and the devotee? That was Bhakti. What is directed towards Bhagavat, which is often translated as God, but also means one who possesses and shares bhaga, literally good fortune or bliss? That was Bhakti. Who is known as the Bhakta or the Bhagavata, shares his or her chosen deity's bhaga? That was the devotee. Now let's see the statements. Most Bhakti literature tells us that riches, learning and high status do not automatically ensure a close relationship with the deity. This is part of a poem composed in Tamil by Appar, a devotee of Shiva who lived about 1400 years ago. Appar was a Vellala. So these two statements are Correct. Now the next one. Because the deities were special, these images of the deity were often placed within special homes, places that we describe as temples. Bhakti inspired some of the best expressions in art, sculpture, poetry and architecture. Both the statements are correct. Now the word Hindu, like the term India, is derived from the river Indus. Who used the term Hindu to refer to people who lived to the east of the river and to their cultural practices including religious beliefs. They were the Arabs and Iranians. So let's see the end of the chapter elsewhere. Points to remember, very, very important. About 2000 years ago, Christianity emerged in West Asia. Jesus Christ was born in Bethlehem, which was then part of the Roman Empire. Christ's teachings were that he was the savior of the world. He also taught people to treat others with love and trust others just as they themselves wanted to be treated. The verses from the Bible, the holy book that contains the teachings of Christ. Christ's teachings appealed to ordinary people and spread through West Asia, Africa and Europe. The first Christian preachers came from West Asia to the west coast of the subcontinent within 100 years of Christ's death. The Christians of Kerala, known as Syrian Christians because they probably came from West Asia, are amongst the oldest Christian communities in the world. So we come to the end of this session. If you like the questions, please do like, share, subscribe and comment below. Thanks for your attention and time. Happy learning.